Hi, I'm Emily, and my parents told me to leave my house key and take my suitcase because the house belonged to the family now. They packed my things, changed the locks, and replaced every trace of me with their own. But what if I told you that wasn't the worst part? What if the real betrayal didn't start at the dinner table but years earlier, with small lies, subtle manipulation, and a plan so calculated it made me question every memory I thought was mine? Why would a family steal a home from their own daughter and then try to erase her as if she never existed? It was supposed to be a special evening, my first dinner as a homeowner. I'd spent the entire day cleaning, folding, arranging everything just right. Maybe I was overdoing it, but I wanted it to be perfect. The house was mine, after all. The table was set with my grandmother's old china, the faded blue rims giving it that perfect touch of nostalgia. I even had name cards, simple ones I printed at work, laminated for a personal touch. I had planned everything meticulously. I imagined my parents walking in, seeing what I had built, and finally acknowledging me. I imagined them smiling, really smiling, and saying something like, "You've done well, Emily." I wanted my father to look at me without calculation in his eyes, and my mother to stop rearranging the salt shakers as if I had gotten everything wrong. By 6:35, I heard tires crunching on the gravel driveway, and my stomach twisted. I adjusted the wine bottle for the third time, smoothing my skirt. I wasn't used to wearing something this fancy. They knocked, and I opened the door with the kind of grin you practice not because it's fake, but because you want so badly for everything to go right. "Well, it smells like food," my sister Laura said, stepping in without so much as a hello. She was wearing suede boots, expensive ones, and tracked faint dust on the floor I'd just mopped. Dad followed behind her, giving a slight nod, his eyes scanning the ceiling and corners, evaluating the place like a rental property. "This house has good bones," he said. "Feels like it should belong to everyone, doesn't it?" I laughed nervously, unsure if it was a compliment. "It's cozy, I think." My mom entered last, silent as ever, her fingers grazing the mantel where I'd placed a framed picture of us from when I was 10, before things started feeling conditional. We sat down, and the salad went untouched. Laura scrolled through her phone under the table, while Dad asked how I managed to afford the hardwood floors. "A house this size is a lot for one person," he remarked. I smiled tight. "It's manageable." No one asked about my promotion. When the main course was served, I caught my mom glancing at the clock. "Everything's cooked?" she asked, not even looking at me. "Thanks," I said, my voice a little flat. She didn't even meet my eyes. Dessert came and went. I brought out the cobbler, homemade crust and hand-cut apples. I waited for Dad to say something, anything. Instead, he stood up. It wasn't just that he stood. It was the way he folded his napkin first, setting it down with precision. His eyes locked onto mine, and something in his jaw shifted. I'd seen it before, when I was 15 and asked to apply out of state. I saw it again when I bought the car without consulting him. "We've discussed this," he said. "This house should come back to the family." I blinked. "I'm sorry?" Mom nodded, not looking at me. "You've done well, honey, but it's too much house and we think it's time you refocus." Laura leaned back, arms crossed. "It's not personal. Your old room is still there," Dad continued, "but we'll be moving into this place. Ryan's already drawn up renovation plans." I stood so quickly my chair scraped the floor. "You're what?" I asked, my voice rising. "We don't want this to get emotional," Mom said, as though I were the one raising my voice. "It's just a house, Emily." Laura stood up too. I hadn't even noticed she had left the room. She reappeared with a suitcase. My suitcase, the green one I'd used when I moved to college. "We packed your essentials," she said, "just so this can go smoothly." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My voice had locked itself somewhere deep in my chest. Finally, I whispered, "I'm the legal owner." Dad's smile was thin. "We'll sort that." I didn't cry. That would have given them too much satisfaction. Instead, I walked to the table, picked up my phone, wallet, and the keys I had polished that morning. I laid them gently next to my untouched wine glass. No one said a word. Outside, the air was colder than it should have been. I placed the suitcase in my trunk without looking back and drove away. I had no destination in mind, just a need to get away. The suitcase thumped in the back with every turn, like a heartbeat reminding me of what I'd lost. When I finally stopped, it was at a gas station on the edge of town, the kind that still sold car air fresheners and cheap coffee. I parked under the buzzing overhead light, my fingers trembling as I reached for my phone. It was buzzing, an unknown number flashing on the screen. Something in me knew it wasn't a call from the past. It was a call from the part of my future they hadn't stolen yet. The call came just as I was about to open the car door. The phone buzzed against my thigh. My thumb hovered before I answered. My voice was low, flat. "This is Emily." "Ms. Shipman, this is Alexis from Midwestern Bank's mortgage department," said a voice that was too chipper for a Sunday morning. "I'm calling to confirm some recent changes requested on your account." My stomach tightened. "What kind of changes?" I asked. "There was a request to add co-owners to your mortgage and to update the primary contact details. We flagged it because it didn't come through the secure portal and the information seemed inconsistent." I turned fully toward the windshield, one hand gripping the steering wheel, though the engine was off. "I didn't authorize any changes. I haven't shared access with anyone." A pause. "That's what we thought. You are still listed as the sole legal owner. No co-owners, no power of attorney, nothing shared. We've locked the account for now and logged the attempted change." I swallowed hard. "Do you have the names they used?" "Vernon and Mara Shipman," she said. It wasn't the names that shocked me. It was how unsurprised I felt hearing them. "Thank you for calling," I said, my voice steady now. "Please send me documentation." "Of course, Miss Shipman." I ended the call and sat in the quiet. The gas station lights hummed above me, neon buzzing like a bug zapper. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something shifted, quiet, like a pin falling in a cavern. I pulled out onto the road and drove. By the time I reached the familiar curve leading into my neighborhood, the sun had fully broken through the clouds, washing everything in a soft gold that felt like mockery. I slowed when I approached my driveway. My key didn't fit. I tried again. No give. I stepped back and looked up. The curtains had changed. A potted plant I hadn't bought now sat on the porch. Then the door opened. A woman I didn't recognize stood there, maybe in her early 20s, wearing joggers and a hoodie that wasn't hers. "You Emily?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "This is my house," she said. She tilted her head, unimpressed. "I was told you wouldn't be coming back." I stared. Told by who? "Mara and Vernon. They said you had some instability, that you left voluntarily." My jaw clenched, but I didn't argue. I didn't want to give her the performance she was probably expecting. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of the hallway. My hallway. The rug was gone. The picture frames on the wall had changed. My home had been dressed in someone else's clothes. "I'm going to need you to leave now," she added. I stepped away from the door without a word. My heels clicked against the concrete as I walked to the car, each step trying not to tremble. As I buckled my seatbelt, a neighbor strolled by with her dog. "Morning, Emily," she said, like nothing was out of place, like she hadn't just seen me shut out of my own life. I managed a nod, nothing more. Driving away, the silence inside the car felt crushing. The air was thick, like I'd stepped out of reality and into a story where I was the only one who didn't know the ending. I drove for what felt like hours, the rhythmic hum of the tires against the asphalt the only sound breaking through my thoughts. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed space to think, space to breathe. The keys that I had so carefully polished earlier this morning now seemed like a cruel joke in my hand. Eventually, I found myself at a small diner on the outskirts of town. It was an old place, one of those 24-hour joints with cracked vinyl booths and neon lights that flickered slightly. I ordered a coffee and sat at the counter, staring at the swirling patterns in my cup as if the solution to my problem would appear there. But it didn't. I couldn't think. The events of the night before kept replaying in my mind, a loop of betrayal and disbelief. How had it come to this? My parents, the people who had raised me, had orchestrated this, and yet I was left feeling like I was the one in the wrong. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Nora, my closest friend, the one person who had never judged me. I quickly unlocked my phone and read her words. "Call me. You're not dealing with this alone." And I felt a pang of gratitude for her, but I didn't call right away. I needed to gather myself first. I needed to figure out how I was going to fix this mess. I paid for my coffee and left the diner, stepping into the cool morning air. I decided to drive to Nora's apartment. She would know what to do. She always did. When I arrived, she was waiting for me outside, her arms crossed, leaning against her car. As soon as she saw me, her face softened and she straightened up. "You okay?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. I shrugged. "Not really, but I'll be fine. I don't know where to start." Nora nodded, gesturing for me to get into the car. "We start by taking action. Let's get to the lawyer's office. You need someone who knows how to handle this kind of thing." I didn't argue. I trusted Nora with everything, and if she thought a lawyer was the next step, then that's what we'd do. The drive to the lawyer's office was silent, save for the occasional hum of the engine. I kept my eyes straight ahead, trying to keep my thoughts in check. What had my parents done? How could they think it was okay to steal my home, to erase me from it like I didn't matter? When we arrived, Nora led me inside, where a woman in her 50s greeted us with a warm smile. "You must be Emily," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Barbara, and I'm here to help you." I shook her hand, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time since the night before. At least I wasn't facing this alone anymore. Barbara led us to a small conference room, and after we sat down, she wasted no time getting to the heart of the matter. "So, tell me what happened," she said, her tone calm and reassuring. I recounted everything, how my parents had come into my house, taken away my belongings, and changed the locks, all while telling me that the house belonged to the family now. I told her about the conversation at dinner, how they had casually dismissed my legal ownership and made plans to move into my home without even consulting me. Barbara listened intently, taking notes as I spoke. When I finished, she looked up from her papers and met my eyes. It sounds like your family is trying to pull off a legal and emotional manipulation, Emily," she said gently. "This is not just about a house. This is about control, and they think you won't fight back." My heart sank. I had always known my family was complicated, but I never thought they would go this far. "What do?" I asked, my voice breaking. Barbara's eyes softened. "We start by gathering evidence. You need to document everything, every conversation, every piece of correspondence, everything they've done. We'll also need to get a copy of the deed and the mortgage papers. You have to prove that this house is legally yours and that their actions have been unauthorized." I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words sink in. I had thought this was just a family dispute, something that could be resolved over time. But now I realized it was so much bigger than that. They were trying to take everything from me, and if I didn't act, I would lose it all. Nora squeezed my hand. "You'll get it back, Emily. They can't just steal from you like this. We'll fight for you." The next few days felt like a blur. I spent hours going through old emails, digging through receipts, and reviewing every piece of paperwork related to the house. Nora was there every step of the way, offering support and making sure I didn't fall apart. I didn't know what I would have done without her. By the end of the week, Barbara had filed a restraining order against my family and officially started the legal process to reclaim my home. I had the documents I needed to prove that I was the sole owner, and slowly, I started to feel a sense of control returning. But that didn't mean the fight was over. My family wasn't going to give up without a fight. And the longer I spent looking at the evidence, the more I realized just how far they had gone to make this plan work. They hadn't just stolen my house, they had been preparing for this moment for years. I wasn't sure what would come next, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I had fought for everything I had, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me now. The next few weeks were filled with legal meetings, phone calls, and paperwork, but slowly, I began to feel like I was regaining control over my life. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope. I wasn't going to let my family rewrite my story. The weeks after filing the restraining order blurred together in a whirlwind of legal meetings, paperwork, and tense phone calls. My home, the place where I had built my life, still felt like a stranger's house. It was empty, silent, and distant. I hadn't been back since that night. The house had been stripped of anything that made it mine. It was like I didn't exist there anymore, and yet I still had the title deed, the mortgage documents, and the legal right to be there. But the more I stared at the documents, the more I realized this wasn't just about a house. This was about my family's betrayal, their attempt to erase me. And I wasn't sure how I would ever look at them the same way again. The first court hearing came quickly, and I could feel the weight of it in my chest as I sat in the waiting room. Nora was beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder as I tried to steady my breathing. The nervous energy was palpable, and the court was cold, sterile. Everything about this process felt foreign, but I knew I had to do it. I had to fight. Barbara had been amazing, walking me through every step of the process. But today was different. Today I would have to stand up in front of the judge and tell my story. Today I would have to face my family, who would no doubt try to twist the truth, paint me as the villain, and claim their innocence. I could already imagine the excuses they would make. When our case was called, I stood up, my legs feeling like lead. Nora squeezed my hand. offering silent support as I walked with Barbara to the front. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her mid-50s, gave me a polite but uninviting glance as I took my seat. Vernon, Mara, and Isolde were already seated across from me. My father didn't meet my eyes, but my mother's gaze never wavered. She looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. The air between us was thick with unspoken tension. They had crossed the line, and now there was no turning back. Barbara stood first, presenting the evidence documents, bank statements, and emails. She laid out the timeline of events, showing how my family had manipulated the situation, how they had taken advantage of my absence and tried to rewrite the narrative of my life. Then it was my turn. I took a deep breath and stood, walking to the witness stand. The weight of everyone's eyes on me felt like a heavy cloak, but I didn't flinch. I had to tell my truth. "I'm Emily Shipman," I began, my voice steady. "This house, the one my family claims should come back to them, was bought and paid for as by me. I worked hard for everything I have, and no matter what they may say, I am the sole owner. I am the person who built this home emotionally and financially." I could feel my parents' eyes burning into me, but I didn't stop. They manipulated me, lied to me, and tried to take what was mine. They tried to erase me from a place that I worked hard to make mine. This wasn't a mistake. This was a deliberate attempt to take everything I had worked for. The judge listened intently, her eyes never leaving me. There was no judgment in her expression, just an understanding that seemed to push me to speak more freely. "They thought I wouldn't fight back," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "But I am fighting. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for what's right. This is my home, and they've no right to take it." As I spoke, I could see Vernon shifting in his seat, his jaw tight. Isolde's fingers were trembling, and Mara's eyes flicked nervously between me and the judge. They weren't prepared for me to stand up for myself. They had underestimated me. When I finished, the judge didn't say anything right away. She simply nodded and called for a break. My heart was racing in my chest, but I felt a sense of relief. For the first time, I had spoken my truth, and I didn't feel like I was the one in the wrong. During the break, Barbara pulled me aside. "You did well," she said, her voice warm. "But it's not over yet. We still need to prove their intent. We need to show that they've been doing this for a long time, not just a few months." I nodded. I knew she was right. The legal battle was just beginning, and there would be more steps to take. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was gaining control over my life again. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was standing up and demanding what was rightfully mine. When we returned to the courtroom, the judge began deliberating, and soon after, she issued a temporary ruling. The house would remain in my name, and my family would have to vacate. It wasn't a final decision, but it was a step in the right direction. My heart swelled with a mixture of relief and triumph, but I didn't let it show. I knew the fight wasn't over. My family would try again. They would scheme. But now I had the law on my side. As I walked out of the courtroom, I could feel the weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but for the first time in months, I felt like I had won something. I wasn't going to let them take my home. I wasn't going to let them take my life. This was just the beginning. The days after the hearing felt like a blur, filled with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. I had won the first round, but I knew the battle wasn't over. My family hadn't given up, and neither had I. But something had shifted. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had reclaimed some part of myself. Nora was my rock through it all. Every time I felt like I couldn't continue, she was there to remind me that I was strong enough to fight for what was mine. The first few nights after the court decision were the hardest. I came home to an empty house. The place where I had always felt safe now felt foreign. The walls felt colder, the rooms quieter. It wasn't just the furniture that had changed, it was the whole energy of the place. But slowly, I started to rebuild. It wasn't just about the physical space, it was about reclaiming my emotional space, too. I spent the next few weeks going through every corner of my house, putting everything back the way I wanted it. I unpacked boxes that had been sitting in storage, filled with memories that my family had tried to erase. I hung photos of my travels, framed pictures of friends who had always supported me, and little trinkets I had collected over the years. This was my home, and no one could take that away from me. It wasn't easy, and I wasn't naive enough to think that everything was resolved. I still had a long way to go before I could fully heal from the betrayal. My parents hadn't apologized, and I didn't expect them to. They still thought they were justified in what they did, but I was starting to see them differently. I wasn't angry anymore, just numb. The anger had been replaced with a kind of resignation. They had shown me who they were, and now I was going to show them who I was. I wasn't going to be the victim of their manipulation anymore. I was going to be the woman who reclaimed her life. A few weeks later, I received another call from Barbara, my lawyer. She had news. Vernon, Mara, and Isolde had finally acknowledged the evidence we had presented, and they had agreed to a settlement. They were not going to fight any further. The house was officially mine, and they would no longer try to claim it. The fight was over. I sat down at my kitchen table, the same place where everything had fallen apart just a few months ago. The sun was shining through the windows, casting a warm glow over the room. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to breathe. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let anyone take my power again. I had survived the worst, and now I was rebuilding, piece by piece. Later that evening, I went for a walk through the neighborhood. The streets were quiet, and the sun was setting, painting the sky with soft pinks and oranges. As I walked, I thought about everything I had been through: the betrayal, the heartache, the anger, and the eventual victory. I had come so far, and I realized that I wasn't the same person I had been when all this started. I was stronger, more self-assured, and I had learned that family didn't always mean unconditional love. Sometimes it meant setting boundaries and standing up for yourself, even when it felt impossible. When I got back home, I noticed something different. The house no longer felt empty. It felt like mine again. There was a sense of peace in the air that hadn't been there before. I smiled to myself, realizing that I had finally made this house my home, not just physically, but emotionally. The journey wasn't over. I knew that. There would be more challenges, more hurdles to face, but I was ready. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could take on whatever came next. As I sat down on the couch, I reached for my phone and sent Nora a message. "Thank you for being here through it all. I couldn't have done it without you." She replied almost immediately, "You did all the hard work. You just needed someone to remind you how strong you are. Proud of you, Em." I smiled as I read her message. She was right. I had done the hard work, and now I was going to keep doing it, one step at a time. This was my life, my future, and no one was going to steal that from me again. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the peace of the evening settle over me. The sound of the neighborhood was quiet, and the world outside seemed still. I was finally at home. And that was enough.